If we have a strong desire from the heart, then the whole universe will work together to make it happen. Ducks walk in flocks, but eagles fly alone. Take my suffering as a testimony that even the power of a president has limits, because the only lasting power is the power of the people, and above all else is the power of God Almighty. A thousand old men can only dream, but a young man can change the world. Nationalism cannot bloom if it does not grow in the garden of internationalism. That is the concept of nationalism that was founded by Indonesia. Not Javanese, not Sumatran, not Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Balinese or others, but Indonesians, who together form the foundation of a national unity. The rose never propagates its fragrance, but its own fragrance permeates its surroundings. Conquering thousands of humans may not be called a winner, but being able to conquer oneself is called a brilliant conqueror. Where slavery is, there is no freedom, and where freedom is, slavery is not. No country is truly alive if there is nothing like a cauldron that boils and burns, and if there is no clash of beliefs in it. A great nation is a nation that respects the services of its heroes. If God gave me 2 lives, for example, I would also dedicate these 2 lives to my homeland and nation. Only a nation that dares to take fate into its own hands will be able to stand strong. Struggles bring difficulties. Great struggles require not only experience but also courage. A nation that does not believe in its own strength as a nation cannot stand as an independent nation. My struggle is easier because it expels the invaders, but your struggle will be more difficult because it is against your own people. But apart from that, the event becomes the independence of a nation that was previously colonized by the imperialism of other nations, independent, truly independent, and not a puppet independence. Unthinking respect for authority is the greatest enemy of truth. A happy man is too satisfied with the present to think too much about the future. As far as the propositions of mathematics refer to reality, they are not certain, and as far as they are certain, they do not refer to reality. Common sense is nothing more than a deposit of prejudices laid down in the mind before you reach 18. I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious. Our death is not an end if we have lived on in our children and the younger generation. For they are us, our bodies are only wilted leaves on the tree of life. The aim of education must be the training of independently thinking and acting individuals, who, however, see in the service of the community their highest life problem. With fame I become more and more stupid, which of course is a very common phenomenon. It strikes me as unfair, and even in bad taste, to select a few individuals for boundless admiration, attributing superhuman powers of mind and character to them. This has been my fate. And the contrast between the popular assessment of my powers and achievements and the reality is simply grotesque. Let me tell you what I look like: pale face, long hair, and a tiny start of a paunch. In addition, an awkward gait, and a cigar in the mouth, and a pen in pocket or hand. But crooked legs and warts he does not have. And so is quite handsome. Also there's no hair on his hands, as is so often the case with ugly men. So it really is a pity that you didn't see me. I am enough of the artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. As a human being, one has been endowed with just enough intelligence to be able to see clearly how utterly inadequate that intelligence is when confronted with what exists. People are like bicycles. They can keep their balance only as long as they keep moving. If I were not a physicist, I would probably be a musician. I often think in music. I live my daydreams in music. I see my life in terms of music. I cannot tell if I would have done any creative work of importance in music. But I do know that I get most joy in life out of my violin. The fairest thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion which stands at the cradle of true art and true science. He who knows it not and can no longer wonder, no longer feel amazement, is as good as dead. A snuffed-out candle. Real leaders must be ready to sacrifice all for the freedom of their people. A fundamental concern for others in our individual and community lives would go a long way in making the world the better place we so passionately dreamed of. Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Everyone can rise above their circumstances and achieve success if they are dedicated to and passionate about what they do. I like friends who have independent minds because they tend to make you see problems from all angles. It always seems impossible until it's done. Many people in this country have paid the price before me and many will pay the price after me. Do not judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. Money won't create success, the freedom to make it will. It is in the character of growth that we should learn from both pleasant and unpleasant experiences. It is not our diversity which divides us, it is not our ethnicity, or religion or culture that divides us. Since we have achieved our freedom, there can only be one division amongst us. Between those who cherish democracy and those who do not. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. A critical, independent and investigative press is the lifeblood of any democracy. The press must be free from state interference. It must have the economic strength to stand up to the blandishments of government officials. It must have sufficient independence from vested interests to be bold and inquiring without fear or favor. It must enjoy the protection of the Constitution, so that it can protect our rights as citizens. Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all. Let there be work, bread, water and salt for all. Let each know that for each the body, the mind and the soul have been freed to fulfill themselves. Without language, one cannot talk to people and understand them. One cannot share their hopes and aspirations, grasp their history, appreciate their poetry, or savor their songs. I choose a lazy person to do a hard job. Because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it. Of all the statistics in health, death is the easiest, because you can go out and ask people, hey, have you had any children who died? Did your siblings have any children who died? People don't forget that. If you take from the most wealthy and give to the least wealthy, it's good. It starts to balance out. Unfortunately, in rich world health, innovation is both your friend and your enemy. Innovation is inventing organ replacement, joint replacement. We're inventing ways of doing new things that cost $300,000 and take people in their 70s and, on average, give them an extra, say, 2 or 3 years of life. And then you have to say, given finite resources, should we fire 2 or 3 teachers to do this operation? I watched the piles of feces go up the conveyor belt. They made their way through the machine. A few minutes later I took a long taste of the end result, a glass of delicious drinking water. If you want to improve the situation of the poorest 2 billion on the planet, having the price of energy go down substantially would be the best thing you could do for them. You may have heard of Black Friday and Cyber Monday. There's another day you might want to know about, Giving Tuesday. The idea is pretty straightforward. On the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, shoppers take a break from their gift buying and donate what they can to charity. Married life is a simpler life. Who I spend my time with is established in advance. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. I admire leaders in science, people who really figure things out like Richard Feynman or people who work on vaccines, tons of people working on the HIV vaccine. There are leaders in business, people like Warren Buffett, who've got a certain approach they take that is pretty amazing. There are product innovators like Steve Jobs were, where he gets behind a concept and does a fantastic job. If you can't make it good, at least make it look good. Microsoft is involved in setting some fairly key standards and people are afraid of it because they think, geez, they are quite capable. It's daunting, I suppose. Your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. My dream is that every child has enough food to eat, good medical care, and the chance to go to school and even attend college. If something is important enough, even if the odds are against you, you should still do it. Going from PayPal, I thought, well, what are some of the other problems that are likely to most affect the future of humanity? Not from the perspective, what's the best way to make money? Physics is a good framework for thinking. Boil things down to their fundamental truths and reason up from there. The first step is to establish that something is possible, then probability will occur. It's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. Persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up. You want to have a future where you're expecting things to be better, not one where you're expecting things to be worse. It is a mistake to hire huge numbers of people to get a complicated job done. Numbers will never compensate for talent in getting the right answer. Two people who don't know something are no better than one, will tend to slow down progress, and will make the task incredibly expensive. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic, being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data like an oracle. These are all things that would have been considered magic a few hundred years ago. My biggest mistake is probably weighing too much on someone's talent and not someone's personality. I think it matters whether someone has a good heart. When I was in college, I wanted to be involved in things that would change the world. Now I am. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop, where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better and questioning yourself. I wouldn't say I have a lack of fear. In fact, I'd like my fear emotion to be less because it's very distracting and fries my nervous system. Life is too short for long-term grudges. Don't be afraid of new arenas. I think it is possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. I could either watch it happen or be a part of it. Being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. I would like to die on Mars. Just not on impact.
The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. For the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. I've always been attracted to the more revolutionary changes. I don't know why. Because they're harder. They're much more stressful emotionally. And you usually go through a period where everybody tells you that you've completely failed. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. It's really hard to design products by focus groups. A lot of times, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. I'm as proud of many of the things we haven't done as the things we have done. Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. Quality is more important than quantity. One home run is much better than 2 doubles. Be a yardstick of quality. Some people aren't used to an environment where excellence is expected. My model for business is the Beatles. They were 4 guys that kept each other's negative tendencies in check, they balanced each other. And the total was greater than the sum of the parts. Sometimes when you innovate, you make mistakes. It is best to admit them quickly and get on with improving your other innovations.